I could barely hold the pose. His hands adjusted my hips firm and steady, guiding me deeper into the stretch. The heat between us was unmistakable, every brush of his fingers, every whispered correction sending electricity through my skin. I'd come here for yoga, but Mason had other plans. His breath was warm against my neck as he leaned in, voice low and rough. Hold it just like that. My body trembled, not from the pose, but from the way he was looking at me, like he wanted to devour every inch. The studio was empty now, just us and the lingering scent of sandalwood. When his lips finally found mine, I knew this lesson was about to become something else entirely. Liked what you just heard? Hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what got you hooked. I read every single one. The morning started like any other, except for the persistent ache in my lower back that had been plaguing me for weeks. I stretched against my kitchen counter, wincing as the familiar knot tightened between my shoulder blades. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, my best friend since college. Girl, you need to try Mason's yoga class. Trust me on this one. I rolled my eyes, but something about her tone made me curious. Emma wasn't one to gush over fitness instructors, and that winking emoji suggested there was more to this recommendation than just good stretching techniques. Is he actually good, or are you trying to set me up? I texted back. Both. But seriously, your back will thank you, and maybe other parts too. Heat crept up my neck. Emma was always the bold one, the one who pushed boundaries while I played. It's safe with my quiet life arranging flowers and avoiding complications, but my back was killing me, and maybe it was time to try something new. An hour later, I found myself standing outside Mindful Movement Studio in the Mission District, clutching my borrowed yoga mat and wondering what I'd gotten myself into. The space was warm and inviting, with exposed brick walls and soft lighting that made everything feel intimate and sacred. Then I saw him. Mason was setting up equipment near the front of the room, his movements fluid and purposeful. Tall, lean, with dark hair that caught the light and forearms that flexed as he arranged blocks and straps. When he looked up and our eyes met, something electric passed between us, a recognition that had nothing to do with familiarity and everything to do with pure, undeniable attraction. You must be Chloe, he said, his voice smooth and warm like honey. Emma mentioned you might be joining us. That's me, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. She said you could help with my back issues. His eyes traveled down my body, not in a way that felt invasive, but with the clinical assessment of someone who understood anatomy. Somehow, that made it even more intimate. We'll take good care of you, he said, and the way he emphasized we made my pulse quicken. As other students filtered in, I claimed a spot near the back, hoping to blend in. But Mason had other plans. During our warm-up, he moved through the room with practiced ease, adjusting postures and offering gentle corrections. When he reached me, his hands landed on my hips as I attempted a forward fold. Let me help, he murmured, his chest nearly touching my back as he guided me deeper into the stretch. His hands were warm through my leggings, and I could feel the heat of his body radiating against mine. Feel that opening? I nodded, not trusting my voice. What I felt was far more than just my hamstrings loosening. The class continued, each pose bringing new opportunities for his touch. During Warrior 2, he adjusted the angle of my front thigh, his fingers pressing firmly into my muscles. In Downward Dog, he placed one hand on my lower back, the other on my sacrum, creating a pressure that sent waves of sensation through my core. Breathe into it, he instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. Let yourself surrender to the sensation. By the time we reached the floor work, I was practically vibrating with tension that had nothing to do with the yoga poses. Every adjustment, every fleeting touch, every moment his eyes lingered on mine was building something between us that felt dangerous and thrilling. As the other students began to pack up their mats, Mason approached me again. How did that feel for your back? Better, I said, and it was true. But other parts of me were feeling things I hadn't expected. Much better. He studied my face, seeming to read something there that made his expression shift. Would you mind staying for a few minutes? I'd like to work on some specific poses that might help with that tension you're carrying. The studio emptied around us, leaving just the two of us in the golden afternoon light filtering through the windows. Mason dimmed the main lights, and suddenly the space felt even more intimate, like we were in our own private world. Let's start with some gentle twists, he said, guiding me to lie on my back. These will help release the tension in your spine. He knelt beside my mat, his hands guiding my legs into position, but as he helped me ease into the twist, his touch lingered longer than necessary. His palm rested flat against my thigh, thumb tracing small circles through the fabric of my leggings. How does this feel? He asked, his voice lower now, more intimate. Good, I breathed, though good didn't begin to capture the sensations coursing through me. Really good. He helped me switch to the other side, But this time his hand settled on my hip, fingers spanning across my lower back. The pressure was perfect, hitting exactly where I needed it. But there was something else in his touch, something that spoke of wants beyond healing. "There's so much tension here," he murmured, his fingers working deeper into the muscle. "When did you last let someone really take care of you?" The question caught me off guard, too personal and too accurate. I met his eyes, seeing my own desire reflected back at me. "It's been a while." His hand moved higher, fingers tracing the edge of my sports bra. "We should address that." I should have said no. Should have grabbed my mat and left. Instead, I arched into his touch, letting out a soft sigh that told him everything he needed to know. Mason's hands moved with the same fluid grace he'd shown throughout class, but now every touch was deliberate, purposeful in a completely different way. He helped me sit up, positioning himself behind me on the mat. "Let's work on opening your heart space," he said, his breath warm against my ear. His hands found the hem of my tank top, fingers grazing the skin beneath. "Is this okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He lifted the fabric slowly, his knuckles brushing against my ribs, my stomach, the underside of my breasts. When the shirt was gone, I felt exposed and alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years. His hands returned to my back, working the muscles with slow, deliberate pressure. But these weren't clinical touches anymore. These were the hands of a man exploring a woman's body, learning its curves and responses. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his lips barely brushing my shoulder. So responsive. I leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against my spine. His arms circled me, hands splaying across my stomach, thumbs tracing the underside of my ribs. When his lips found my neck, I melted completely. The kiss was soft at first, exploratory, but when I turned in his arms to face him, something shifted. Our mouths met with sudden urgency, months of attraction crystallizing into pure need. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss. "I've been thinking about this since the moment you walked in," he confessed against my lips. "Just since then?" I teased, nipping at his lower lip. "I've been thinking about it since Emma first mentioned your name." He laughed, low and rough, before capturing my mouth again. This time, there was no hesitation, no question about where this was leading. His hands worked the clasp of my sports bra with practiced ease, and when the fabric fell away, he pulled back to look at me. "Perfect," he breathed, before lowering his head to trace kisses along my collarbone. I arched beneath him, my hands working at his shirt, desperate to feel skin against skin. When it was gone, I ran my palms over the lean muscles of his chest, feeling them flex beneath my touch. He was beautiful, all controlled strength and fluid movement, like he was still performing yoga even in this moment of passion. He guided me back onto the mat, his body covering mine, supported on his forearms. The press of his weight was delicious, grounding me while simultaneously making me feel like I might float away. His mouth found mine again, and I lost myself in the taste of him, the feel of his skin, the way he moved against me with such perfect rhythm. His hands explored my body, with the same attention he'd given to adjusting my poses, learning what made me gasp, what made me arch, what made me whisper his name like a prayer. When his fingers hooked into the waistband of my leggings, I lifted my hips to help him remove them, past caring about anything but the need building between us. "So beautiful," he murmured, his hands skimming up my thighs. "So perfect." When his mouth followed the path his hands had traced, I thought I might come apart completely. He took his time, building the tension slowly, patiently, like he was guiding me through the most important pose of my life. Every touch was deliberate, every kiss calculated to drive me higher. "Please," I whispered, my hands fisting in his hair. I know what you need," he said, his voice thick with desire. "Let me give it to you." When he finally rose above me, when our bodies joined in the most intimate connection possible, I understood why Emma had been so insistent. This wasn't just about physical pleasure, though the way he moved, the way he filled me, the way he seemed to know exactly what I craved was beyond anything I'd experienced. This was about connection, about two people finding something in each other they hadn't even known they were looking for. We moved together like we'd been partners for years. Instead of hours, our bodies finding a rhythm that felt natural and inevitable. His hands gripped my hips, guiding me to meet him thrust for thrust, and I could see in his eyes that he was as lost in this as I was. "That's it," he encouraged, his voice strained with control. "Take what you need." I did, meeting him with increasing urgency, chasing the sensation that built with every movement. When my climax crashed over me, it was with an intensity that left me shaking, crying out his name as waves of pleasure coursed through my entire body. He followed moments later, burying his face in my neck as he found his own release. We lay tangled together afterward, our breathing slowly returning to normal. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin, and I felt more relaxed than I had in months. "How's your back feeling now?" he asked, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "What back?" I laughed, stretching languidly against him. "I think you cured me." "Good," he said, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Though you might need regular treatments to maintain the benefits." I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with a text. Emma's name flashed on the screen, and guilt crashed over me like a cold wave. "Everything okay?" Mason asked, noticing my sudden tension. I sat up, suddenly aware of our nakedness, of what we'd just done. "That's Emma. She'll want to know how class went." Mason propped himself up on his elbow, studying my face. "Are you having regrets?" "No," I said quickly, because it was true. What we'd shared had been incredible, transformative even. But Emma, she's been trying to set us up for weeks. What if she knew this would happen? What if she planned it? "Would that be so bad?" he asked, his hand finding mine. "If she did, I owe her a thank you." I smiled despite my worry. "It's just, she's going to ask questions. She always does. And I don't know what to tell her." "Tell her the truth," he said simply. "That you came to yoga, found something you didn't expect, and you're planning to come back." "Am I?" I asked, suddenly needing to hear his answer. "Planning to come back?" Instead of answering with words, he pulled me down for another kiss, this one soft and full of promise. "I teach again tomorrow," he murmured against my lips. Same time, I kissed him back, tasting the future in his mouth. "I'll be here." As I gathered my clothes and prepared to leave, Mason caught my hand. "Chloe, for what it's worth, I think Emma knew exactly what she was doing, and I think she did it because she cares about you." Walking home through the mission, I felt different. Looser in my skin, more alive, like Mason had awakened something in me that had been sleeping for too long. My phone buzzed again with another text from Emma, but this time I smiled instead of panicking. "How was yoga? Did Mason fix your back?" I typed back, "He worked out all my tension. Think I'm going to become a regular." Her response came immediately. "I knew it. Can't wait to hear everything." As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I realized I was actually looking forward to that conversation. Emma had given me something precious, not just an introduction to incredible physical pleasure, but a reminder that I deserve to take risks, to want things, to let myself be desired. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The next morning brought doubt with the sunrise. As I lay in bed, replaying every moment of the previous afternoon, I wondered if I'd misread the situation. Had the connection I felt been real? Or was I just another student who'd gotten caught up in Mason's magnetic presence? But when I arrived at the studio that evening, the way his face lit up when he saw me dispelled any uncertainty. He greeted me with professional warmth, but his eyes held secrets that made my pulse quicken. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, as I unrolled my mat in what was becoming my usual spot. "Flexible," I said, meeting his gaze boldly. "Ready for whatever you want to teach me." The class that followed was an exercise in restraint and anticipation. Every adjustment felt loaded, with memory and promise. When he guided my hips in crescent lunge, I could feel the phantom touch of his hands from the day before. When he demonstrated a particularly challenging flow, I watched the way his body moved and remembered how it had felt pressed against mine. But we were surrounded by other students, so we maintained the pretense of teacher and pupil, even as the air between us crackled with unfinished business. "Remember," he told the class as we settled into final relaxation, "yoga is about finding balance. Between effort and ease, between strength and surrender." His eyes found mine across the dimly lit room, and I understood that he wasn't just talking about yoga anymore. After class, as the other students filtered out, I lingered near my mat, pretending to stretch while actually just waiting. Mason approached, with a bottle of water and that same knowing smile. "Thirsty?" he asked, and the simple word felt loaded with double meaning. I accepted the water, our fingers brushing as he handed it to me. "Always." This time, when the studio emptied, there were no pretenses about additional poses or therapeutic adjustments. Mason locked the front door and dimmed the lights, then turned to me with frank desire in his eyes. I couldn't concentrate on anything today, he admitted, crossing to where I stood. All I could think about was having you here again, having you to myself. "I'm here," I said simply, stepping into his arms. The kiss was immediate and hungry, all the restraint from class dissolving in an instant. His hands roamed my body with familiar confidence, relearning the curves he'd explored the day before. But there was something new in his touch, too, a possessiveness that hadn't been there during our first encounter. "I want to try something different," he murmured against my neck. "If you trust me?" I nodded without hesitation. I did trust him, completely and instinctively. He guided me to a prop closet I hadn't noticed before, retrieving several items: silk scarves, a bolster, blocks. My pulse quickened as I realized what he was suggesting. These aren't just for restorative poses, he said, running one of the scarves through his fingers. They can be used for other kinds of support. Heat flooded through me at the implication. Show me. What followed was the most intense physical experience of my life. Mason used the props to position my body in ways that enhanced every sensation, the silk scarves creating gentle restraint that somehow made me feel more free than I'd ever been. He took his time, building pleasure slowly and methodically, bringing me to the edge again and again before finally allowing me the release I craved. When it was over, we lay entwined on the bolster, both of us shaking from the intensity of what we'd shared. That was... I started, then trailed off, lacking words adequate to describe the experience. Better than yesterday? He asked with a satisfied smile. Different, I said carefully. More intense. Good intense or overwhelming intense? I considered the question, taking inventory of my body, my emotions, my overall state of being. Good, I decided. Definitely good. His arms tightened around me. I'm glad, because I have a lot more I want to show you. As we dressed and prepared to leave, I felt that same mixture of satisfaction and uncertainty I'd experienced the day before. This thing between us was becoming something bigger, more complex than either of us had probably anticipated. Mason, I said as he walked me to the door. Where do you see this going? He paused, considering the question seriously. I don't know, he admitted, but I know I'm not ready for it to end. Are you? I thought about Emma, about the questions she'd inevitably ask, about the complications that might arise from getting involved with someone in my friend's orbit. Then I thought about how Mason made me feel. Alive, desired, adventurous in ways I'd never allowed myself to be. No, I said finally. I'm not ready for it to end either. He kissed me goodnight at the door, soft and sweet this time, full of affection rather than urgent passion. As I walked home, I realized that somewhere between yesterday's spontaneous encounter and tonight's planned seduction, we'd crossed a line from physical attraction into something that felt suspiciously like the beginning of a relationship. The thought should have scared me. Instead, it filled me with anticipation for whatever came next. So tell me, have you ever walked into a situation expecting one thing and found something completely different? Something that changed everything about how you saw yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and love hearing your stories. And don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. It's going to be incredible.